Welcome to the complete comic book history of the Dark Knight. I am Salazar Knight, and these are years 4, 5, and 6 of the Silver Age of Batman. As promised, the madness continues, and the first thing that comes along are the Whirly Bats. At this point, we all know about the Batmobile, the Batplane, the Battrain, the Batboat, and the Batcopter, and the Bat-Submarine, and all the Bat vehicles. But I'm sure you have not heard about the Whirly Bat, which first appeared in Detective Comics 257. But don't worry, it is not that important. It's just a one-man helicopter vehicle created by Batman to chase criminals on air, only faster. You know, not such a big deal. But speaking of weird items, in Batman number 117 there's a Batman sightseeing bus and also the comeback of the Bat Skates, which are jet-powered skates. Now I say comeback because Robin used them during year 3 of the Golden Bat, which you can check by clicking here. Warning, the old videos are not always very good. However, the most interesting thing from this issue is probably the first appearance of the shark repellent. Yes, that really cool spray used in the Batman TV show from the 60s first appeared in comics. How about that? And now let's get serious for a while. Prior to this moment, Batman and Superman have been friends, and if they challenged or compete with each other, it was always in a friendly way. In World's Finest number 95, however, the heroes are manipulated by some aliens who want to know who is the best hero. Like this, they give Batman superpowers and they force them to fight each other. At first, the heroes only try to outsmart each other, but as things get heated, it turns into a full-on brawl. Since both of them have the same power level, the battle is even until the end, and the fight only stops when Robin learns the truth about the aliens and convinces them to stop. After returning to normal, Batman and Superman apologize and they become super friends again. And it is still a better love story than Batman v Superman. Did you know that the Calendar Man is also a Silver Age villain? He first appeared in Detective Comics 259, and as with almost all Silver Age villains, he started as a criminal who dressed up in ridiculous costumes. He was like this for a long time until he was made cool in the 90s. For Calendar Man, that happened in Batman: The Long Halloween. Next, there's Batman 121, which features the introduction of one of the most fan-favorite Batman villains ever, Mr. Freeze. Of course, in this issue he is not called Mr. Freeze, but instead he's called Mr. Zero, and just like the Calendar Man, Mr. Zero was not as cool as Mr. Freeze is nowadays. Mr. Zero was a scientist who created an ice gun, but during the experiments he was exposed to a freezing chemical and he was no longer able to survive in normal temperature. Thus, he became Mr. Zero and he started a crime career. We all know by now that Mr. Freeze was made cool in the 90s, and not exactly because of Arnold's great puns. No, it happened in Batman the Animated Series in the episode Heart of Ice, which made Mr. Freeze a more tragic figure. However, the episode has some elements from Batman 121, like Mr. Freeze and his gang going around in a freezing van, or the ice hideout with ice sofas and the frozen television. And that's why Batman the Animated Series was so good, because despite being modern, it still used elements from the classic Batman stories. Moving on to year 5, we have the ultimate weird Batman character, Bat-Mite. Introduced in Detective Comics 267, Bat-Mite was a magical being that looked like an elf with a weird bat suit. Bat-Mite is very similar to the other magic character, Mr. Mixel, that guy, who was a Superman character. Bat-Mite is the ultimate Batman fan. And he also has super magical powers. He became a very constant character during the first years of the Silver Age, but after a while he was dropped as the Batman stories evolved. However, the creation of Bat-Mite is considered by many the first step in the Batman comics towards different kind of stories. At this time, Jack Schiff became the editor of the Batman books, replacing longtime Golden Age editor Whitney Ellsworth. As the new editor, Jack Schiff gave writers more creative freedom. Before this issue, the Batman stories had been repetitive, and it was mainly because the people working in those books had been doing the same thing for more than 20 years. That said, being original and fresh is not always good, but considering that the stories were turning stale, this was a good change, if only for a short time. Meanwhile, in Batman number 126, the Batman Statue of Liberty. No, but seriously, in this issue a second villain that calls himself Firefly appears. This one is different from the previous Firefly and only appears in this one issue. However, DC used the name of this Firefly, Ted Carson, and adapted him into the New 52 universe with elements from the original Firefly, Garfield Lynns. Either way, both villains are not very interesting. In Detective Comics 275, Batman becomes the Zebra Man, and not because he goes camouflaged to Africa. Nope. This is the result of an accident that turned Batman into a human magnet. In this state, he repels everything within his reach until he finds a way to revert the change and returns to normal. Oh yeah, and I forgot to mention that the villain of the story is called the Zebra Man. Now, despite all the crazy stories, there is a very special moment in this year which affects not only Batman but the entire DC universe. See, it is in this year that the Justice League of America was created. First appearing in Brave and the Bold number 28, the Justice League of America was formed of the best DC superheroes: Flash, Superman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, Aquaman, and of course, Batman. This would be just the start of many adventures and also the inspiration for another titan of the comic books, and Batman was part of that story. However, because this series is just about Batman, we're not going to check those stories. But hey, we never know what might happen in the future. Maybe there will be a Justice League series. Or maybe not. Probably not. And in year 6, there is just one single important thing happening. This year is filled with science fiction and crazy alien stories, which are so characteristic of the Silver Age. But the most important event happening during this year is the introduction of the first and original Batgirl in Batman number 139. This version of Batgirl is very different from Barbara Gordon because she is the niece of Batwoman, and when she discovers that her aunt works with Batman and Robin, she decides to join the team as Batgirl. However, this version of Batgirl was not nearly as popular as Barbara Gordon, and that's why we haven't seen anything of her in modern comics. And with that, we end this episode of the Silver Bat. In the next episode, we take a very quick look at some of the worst moments in the history of Batman, and I know you don't want to miss those, so if you click on that subscribe button, you will never miss any important detail in the complete comic book history of the Dark Knight. Also, feel free to drop a like, share your comments, but most importantly, be happy. That's it for now. Godspeed, my friends.